Tonight on Free Minds TV, we're going to be talking about the U.S. Supreme Court dealing another blow to your liberties. Also, the government of Australia says that identical twins, well, they're not siblings. We're also going to be talking about the first non-smoking nation to ban all tobacco products. That includes possession, the Downsizer Dispatch, and a whole lot more tonight on Free Minds TV.
And welcome to a brand new edition of Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. With you, as always, is Tobias.
And Nick.
And we want to welcome the Grafton viewers in Grafton, New Hampshire, onto this show, joining us tonight. And you guys should be carrying us on a weekly basis. Welcome to the show. And just wanted to throw it out there. If you're watching us on the internet or somewhere other than your cable access channel and you want to see us there, you can really help out, help spread Free Minds TV. We are expanding, getting on more and more stations. Help us out by logging on to freemindstv.com and clicking on the contact button, or just emailing us fmtv@freemindstv.com. All right, we have a full jam-packed show to get to, all sorts of liberties at stake, and we're going to bring the latest news to you. Let's start with the U.S. Supreme Court. This coming from Boston.com. Washington reporting, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled on Monday that police officers have leeway to frisk a passenger of a car simply if the car is pulled over. Now, previously, they needed probable cause. You know, that pesky Fourth Amendment always getting in the way. They actually had a reason to pull someone out of the car and pat them down. They've been able to do it to the driver for a while now, but previously, at least passengers, if you're just driving in a car and it gets pulled over, well, police officers needed some kind of a probable cause before they'd rip you out of the car and pat you down. Well, now the Supreme Court says no more of that garbage. We're just going to allow the police officers to do it at their leeway whenever they'd like, or whenever they might feel a little bit threatened. Nick, is this in line with the Fourth Amendment, or is the Supreme Court run amok? What's going on here, in your opinion?
Well, the argument has been made that with the driver, they did argue that if the driver was swerving, that would constitute probable cause to do something like a breathalyzer test to see if they were drunk, and that's the reason why they're swerving. But if you're just a passenger in the car, you haven't actually committed any offense. So if you haven't committed an offense and they don't see anything illegal on you or anything that's, blatantly obvious that gives them probable cause to conduct a search for something, it doesn't make sense. They should at least be able to articulate what they suspect you have. Well, and if they don't, then they have no reason to search you. They're just doing it arbitrarily because they can.
Well, in this article, what they're saying is they do need to have some kind of suspicion. It doesn't need to be specific at all. It's at the police's leeway to decide whether they think that the passenger in a car might have any kind of reason to be patted down and searched. Now, I just find this quote from the Supreme Court, one of the justices reporting on here, a little bit telling to what they actually think about the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms, the right to protect oneself and carry a weapon. I mean, it's ingrained in the Constitution. It's a lot of what this nation was founded on, is the right to bear arms. But the Supreme Court, which recently ruled in favor of the Second Amendment, at least in the Washington, D.C. handgun ruling a few months back that we reported on, it seems in their language they feel a little bit differently. What they say is, quote, any person, quote, is therefore dangerous to public safety and police and public officials if they are armed in any way. So if they're armed, they are a danger no matter what. Previously, it was if you're armed, you're helping out. It's a deterrent if you're armed from people committing robbery against you or committing a violent act, because, well, who's going to commit robbery on someone who's armed?
Yeah, it's sort of surprising that both of those rulings came out of the same court, because all the justices are the same. And they're saying, on the one hand, that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to bear arms, that it wasn't this collective right or a right that belonged to the state governments. On the other hand, they're essentially saying you don't have a right to carry that gun outside of your home.
Right.
So, what good does it do if you have the right to bear arms, but you're considered a danger to public safety if you do that?
Well, if you ever had any doubt that you did have any Fourth Amendment protections left, well, they've gone out the window. The Supreme Court pretty much threw out the Fourth Amendment, which states that they should have probable cause before they search you. Not anymore. Anyways, we must move on. Let's go across to the land down under and pick on Australia for a bit. This is just an example of bureaucracy run amok. And what happens when government get their legalese into the law that, of course, you all must follow? Government says that the identical twins are, quote, not related. Now, identical twins mean they came from the same egg. Their DNA is identical. But according to Australian legalese, well, they're not related. This is because these two twins, Mrs. and Mrs. Glaspie, were separated at birth. They were adopted by two different families nearly 50 years ago and recently found each other, one of whom lives in Australia, the other one in Malaysia, and they wanted to reunite and both become citizens of Australia. Well, in Australia, how it works is you can sponsor someone to get citizenship if you're related to them. So the sister, Miss Glaspie, said, "Great, we're identical twins. What better sponsor than me?" No, no, no. In government legalese, you must be legally related and have the same last name or be adopted by the same families, even though their DNA is identical. How much more related can you get? So, unfortunately, they don't get to reunite and at least live in the same country like they hope to because of government legalese or bureaucracy run amok.
Right. I mean, if you had been born in the same household and then were separated at whatever point, maybe say when you're 4 years old, for whatever reason, then I'm assuming you could do it. I don't know all the laws in Australia. Maybe they're weird about that too. But they would allow you to do that even though essentially you don't really know the person from your childhood. I guess that's the argument they're going to make here. But it seems like you don't necessarily have to know the person. You just by being related to them, if it's legal, you can get them into the country. But identical twins don't count.
Yeah, and
it's just very bureaucratic, it seems.
It's also very telling of bureaucracy. I mean, these people really are just bureaucrats. Any sane person, it would seem, would say, okay, well, this rule is ridiculous. Clearly, these people are related. Looking at them, even though they've been separated for 50 years, they look exactly the same. Their DNA is exactly the same. Let's let these ones by. But no, of course not. We're the government, and we have our rules, we have our laws, and we must follow them.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, and I think a lot of people don't really think it through when they're talking about we need this new government regulation or that new government regulation. Yet at the same time, a lot of those people who are saying we need new regulations also complain about existing regulations, how they're bureaucratic, how they don't make sense. Well, the fact is the government isn't going to enforce them in a way that makes sense. They're not going to use their discretion. Once a law or regulation is written, it's one size fits all. They're going to enforce it the way it's written. I mean, essentially, that's all they know how to do.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. We'll see what comes of this, but as long as the government's in charge, well, they have no real incentive to make the customer happy because they're the government and they have a monopoly on such things. All right, before we get into the Downsizer Dispatch, I did want to bring an FMTV update. We've been covering this story. You probably saw him, if not on Free Minds TV, somewhere in the news. The shoe thrower. This happened in December.
Not the shoe bomber. That was a different guy.
This is the shoe thrower. Yeah, that's the guy. You see him on the screen throwing his shoes at GW when he made his latest trip over to Iraq. He was Mr. Al-Zidi. He decided that he was fed up with Bush. He was a journalist. He was at the press conference. Threw both his shoes, got him off and threw them at George Bush. George Bush, to his credit, did have some excellent ducking moves there. But since then, Al-Zidi has been in custody, and he is not doing all that well in custody. He's been beaten. Reportedly, he's had ribs broken, his arm broken, and suffered internal bleeding, all under the custody of, this great new government that we're propping up over there.
Yeah, I mean, he's in Iraqi custody, and the fact is, while we went in there to try to oust Saddam and supposedly instill a sense of democracy into that country, try to give them civil liberties, the new government there, by any objective measure, is it's not as bad as Saddam, but it's not a progressive country where you have the same rights to not be tortured or abused, and you don't have a lot of the legal rights that American citizens or other people in Western countries have. So it's not like suddenly Iraq is a mini United States or a little Europe. The laws there are still pretty oppressive.
So we spent billions of dollars, suffered our image in the whole world. I mean, the whole world pretty much has a negative view of us since we led the invasion in 2003. And what have we gotten out of it? A government that still allows people to be beaten, internal bleeding, broken ribs for simply throwing a shoe and missing, by the way.
But it's a democracy that's torturing people, and that makes it better. See, we went into Iraq supposedly to install a democracy. The problem is a democracy doesn't necessarily guarantee civil liberties. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that you have a humane justice system. Democracy is whatever the majority wants, they get. And we've seen in historical examples, people in a democracy don't always vote for a good choice. They don't always vote for more freedom. In fact, Hitler did actually win an election to take over Germany. He didn't just take it over. So democracy doesn't guarantee civil rights.
Two wolves and a sheep deciding what they're going to be having for dinner. Anyways, the end of this story states that Mr. Zidi and his lawyer are seeking political asylum in Switzerland, where he can be treated fairly and have a fair trial. Currently, his trial's been postponed while they debate whether they're going to be charging him with assault on Mr. Bush or simply insulting President Bush, because in Arab countries, I guess it's quite the insult to only show the sole of someone's foot to someone, let alone actually throw a shoe. So very insulting. And so, you know, we overturn this government to install our new one where we can actually have laws against insulting people. Great job, America. All right, we got to move on. We've got to keep it here. Let's move on to Washington, D.C. and some of the bad laws that they're enacting. Let's move on to the Downsizer Dispatch.
All right, well, this week for the Downsizer Dispatch, it's not really a piece of legislation. We're giving you a particular campaign that they're doing. Basically, Downsize DC is making an announcement. They started off the year very strong. By the end of 2008, they had already met their fundraising requirements for all of 2009. Now, they're still doing fundraising because they're trying to grow the organization and trying to reach more people. For our new viewers in Grafton, I would like to let you know that Downsize DC is an organization that essentially allows you to contact your representatives. They keep you updated on different ways that the federal government is trying to increase bureaucracy, increase the size of government, increase taxes, various different things. And what they're allowing you to do is sign up for their email list, keep you up to date, and it's very easy to, just from that email list, click and then write essentially a form letter to your representatives. You can personalize it if you want to. And Downsize DC is giving a caution here because essentially what their agenda is they're trying to reduce the size and scope of the federal government. Now, not everyone on Downsize DC necessarily wants to see a really tiny federal government. Some people were over there because they disliked a lot of the civil liberties infringements of the Bush administration. But you know, maybe they're more of a liberal persuasion. They don't want to write a letter on a campaign to reduce certain entitlement programs. So Downsize DC is just cautioning that if you go there and there are certain campaigns you don't like, well, you don't have to send that message. It's totally up to you. You're updated on what campaigns are going on, but you don't send a message unless you click the submit button. And basically, it's a la carte. So if you're going there and your main issue is you want to reduce entitlement programs, wait for those campaigns to come along, send messages on that. And if there's other stuff that doesn't float your boat, don't send it there. But essentially, if you even think there's a couple programs that are too big in the federal government, maybe you want to do away with one or two departments entirely. Downsize DC is a good place for you. Go to downsizedc.org, sign up for the Downsizer Dispatch, or just browse around, check out the campaigns they have up there. And they're still going to be focusing on their two major campaigns, the Write the Bills Act, to actually get Congress to write the bills that become law and we have to follow, and also the
Read the Bills Act.
Read the Bills Act. They have to read them before they vote on them.
Well, if they wrote them, I guess they wouldn't have as much problem reading them. But, you know, anyways, they are the government and they don't really like any of that hard work.
Yeah, again, downsizedc.org. You know, you'll be hearing about some of the campaigns over and over again, but check it out. Maybe you'll find something that really appeals to you.
Yeah, and it's important to keep on bugging these legislators because they really don't care much if they don't hear from you. But if you bug them enough, they think that, well, maybe their vote's at stake. So anyways, check it out. Keep bugging them month after month. Get a campaign that's interesting to you. All right, when we come back, we are going to be focusing on the first nation in the world to actually outlaw and ban even possessing tobacco. All that and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV. Was that a sheep?
This edition of whatever it is you're watching is brought to you by
Ridley Report, Ridley Report, something, 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 Ridley Report. Ridley Report, Ridley Report, something, 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 Ridley Report.
Free Minds TV is brought to you in part by Life Productions for your basic and semi-pro video production needs. From full wedding and event coverage to DVD authoring and distributions, lifeproductions.com, that's lyfproductions.com.
I'm Sam with OTN, and you're watching Free Minds TV, one of the few media sources that asks you to think for yourself.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. It's Tobias here with you.
And Nicholas.
All right, Nick. Nicholas. We would like to invite the viewers to
Tobias.
log on to our website, freemindstv.com. All the old archives are there, as well as Free Minds Radio, which is live Sundays from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ways to help this show, the forum, show content, and a whole lot more, all at freemindstv.com. All right, we're going to be getting into the first nation to ever ban smoking, and we'll see how this goes. But first, we've got some financial matters to tackle and those huge government bailouts that keep on going on and how all the money is just being squandered away. Yes, your tax dollars being wasted, given away to corporations and other people, pretty much untied. Whoever has the best connections in Washington gets the most money. Nick, what are they spending it on?
Well, the bailout went to a number of different banks and other financial institutions to try to prevent that imminent economic collapse. You'll probably remember that. Citigroup was one of the beneficiaries. They got $45 billion worth of your money. And what they've done is taken delivery of their new $50 million corporate jet. Now, in their defense, they ordered this jet 2 years ago, and they're now going to take delivery of it. You have to wonder, was extravagant spending on things like a new corporate jet maybe what put them under?
You know, I would kind of like a new corporate jet for me. $50 million, that would be, I could, home in the sky, home away from home, right?
And I'm sure they probably have their own pilot too, and you'd have a corporation to essentially write the checks for the gas bills, filing the flight plans. I mean, there's a lot of costs that go along with it once you actually have the jet. The jet's $50 million, but then you have pilots and maintenance and fuel and all of that stuff.
Money down the toilet. Well, you know, we could actually do this show on the jet if we got this. How do you sign up for one of these government bailouts? What do we need to do here on Free Minds TV to get us some of this free money that the government's giving away? Well, it's our money.
We have to rack up enough debt to make the Treasury Department believe that we're going to cause the collapse of the U.S. economy.
I've got quite a few student loans. Would that qualify me, or do I have to have massive amounts of debt?
Do you have like a couple $100 billion worth of student loans outstanding?
No, unfortunately.
That's probably not going to do it then. And
no free money for me.
But the good news is none of the
viewers
get that luxury either. So we don't have to feel too bad. It's just Citibank.
Yeah, we do. We have to pay Citibank to $50 million for their corporate jet, and that's only the one that's been highlighted. Who knows what other crap they're wasting our money on?
They actually do have jets. They have two. They're older Dassault European jets. They're still luxury jets, but this one is newer and nicer.
Flat screen TVs?
Probably.
Nice.
Yeah, probably a full bar too.
Well, since we're partial owners, sign me up for my ride. I plan on doing some travels, and since I'm a partial owner, do I get to ride on this new government jet that I own part of? Probably not. Don't get the luxury. Anyways, let's move on. Let's move to the first non-smoking nation in the world. Now, previously, people have been smoking all over the place, and that's why you don't see much violent crime coming from cigarettes. They're one of the most addictive substances on Earth. We have millions, if not billions, of people around the globe addicted to these things. Yet, unlike crack and cocaine and other hard drugs that are pretty much illegal around the world, you don't see people knocking off convenience stores to get a single pack of cigarettes. Maybe some people will go after cartons and cartons to sell them later, but the average user isn't going out there and knocking down a convenience store to get their cigarettes, even though they're one of the most most addictive substances on Earth. They're not that dangerous because they're readily available.
They will, tobacco
It's not good for your lungs, but I'm talking about people breaking into convenience stores trying to get their fix.
There's not a lot of crime. It is a harmful drug. I mean, I've heard it's probably the leading cause of death for about 1 in 3 users. Some people quit. Some people just don't get cancer or heart disease. But they're bad for you. But in no country in the world up until now have they been illegal. And it's not just cigarettes. People also chew tobacco, and I don't know what else people do with tobacco.
They snuff it.
They do. Not many people do that anymore, I don't think. But maybe in places like Bhutan they do.
Well, hopefully not anymore in Bhutan, because it's now illegal, since December actually, and it will carry with it a fine of the equivalent to $232 American. While that doesn't sound like too much money, it's about 2 months' salary in Bhutan. the tiny Himalayan kingdom recently became the world's first nation to outlaw all tobacco products. Now, this means it's not only illegal to sell tobacco and smoke tobacco, but even possessing the plant, like we saw Andrew Carroll do as a civil disobedience here in America with marijuana. Well, it's the same in Bhutan now with tobacco. So, will this work? Well, you know what? These trendy bureaucrats in Bhutan, I don't know how to pronounce their name, so I'm not going to try, but listen to this quote. This guy is a genius. If we had thought of this, we would have eradicated the drug problem a long time ago. Quote, if you can't get it, you can't smoke it. So they're going to make it illegal,
so you can't
and
get
it will be gone. It'll vanish from the whole nation of Bhutan. There will not be any tobacco. No one will try to bring it in because it's illegal.
Right, just like during alcohol prohibition, there was no alcohol in the United States.
It worked, didn't it?
No, it didn't.
And the drug war, making all drugs illegal and taking away the supply there, freed the entire nation from all drugs, right? That happened.
Yeah, no one uses drugs in the U.S. anymore. And it bothers me, too, because the idea that somebody may be passing through Bhutan, maybe saying they're coming, I think Bhutan borders India, so you're going from India to whatever's on the other side of Bhutan, and you have a pack of cigarettes in your vehicle. Are you necessarily going to be familiar with all of the laws in this small Himalayan kingdom, as they described it? I don't think so. So I would think that travelers from, well, not necessarily the West, but from anywhere outside of Bhutan are going to be ones who get nabbed by this. Not to mention, a lot of Bhutanese are probably not going to follow the law because they're addicted to cigarettes. And it's not that hard to smuggle an illegal drug into a country.
No, they can't keep drugs out of prisons here in the United States. A prison, I mean, they're loaded with drugs. So when everyone in there can't get out, you have drugs coming in, how are they supposed to make cigarettes and other drugs disappear from the face of the earth when they simply write it down on paper, it's illegal, and we will prosecute you if you do it? Look, people make their own decisions in life. Yeah, smoking's not good for you. But are you really willing to put people in jail for it? Give me a break. This is ridiculous. Anyways, they did kick this off in late December with a huge bonfire of all the tobacco products. They round them all up in the state capital.
All the tobacco products that people handed over.
Yeah, they had a huge old bonfire, a kickoff celebration to no more tobacco. Big old bonfire right outside the Capitol. So this is ridiculous. I look forward to reading some of the now violent crime that'll spike up from this prohibition of tobacco products. And if you're going on vacation and you're a smoker, try to avoid the nation of Bhutan. All right.
It's only $232, so you can take your chances. It won't bankrupt you. It'll bankrupt people who live in Bhutan because they don't make very much money.
Imagine a law that takes away 2 months of your salary. That would put a lot of people completely behind their mortgage payments, everything else. But, you know, in the name of keeping everybody safe and healthy, Nick. All right, let's move on. Let's go pick on Iceland. We've been covering this topic on Free Minds Radio the past couple of weeks. The nation of Iceland's been floundering with the financial crisis and not doing all that well. What's the latest news, Nick?
Well, the conservative-led government in Iceland has gone away. It's basically the prime minister resigned, so did the minister of economics, I think, something to that effect, the guy who handled business. And it's left Iceland's center-left Social Democratic Alliance Party in control. Not that it makes a big difference because they were already part of the government, they just weren't in charge. It sounds like them and the Green Party will be leading the new coalition government, and I don't know what good that's going to do, but people were very angry at the government that had allowed things to degenerate to the point that they did. The currency in Iceland was essentially not destroyed, but it devalued rapidly, and their economy was turned upside down. Basically, they had way more debt than the country could ever pay back.
Now, this is quite a telling thing for us here in the United States because Iceland, as I recall, you quoted some number like 300,000 people live there.
320,000 people.
And that's a pretty small nation. So you see how in smaller nations that used to be stable just a little while ago are floundering in this economy as they devalue their dollar and take on more and more debt. It's not that much longer before we continue to take on this debt that similar things could happen to us here in the United States. Or am I just gloom and doom here, Chicken Little, the sky is falling? I always like to pick on those people. Is this a warning sign, or are we so detached in our economy, so strong that we're going to work our way through this?
I think there's a strong parallel here. One is that now with the leftist part of the government now in control and people very angry at what had been the status quo, it sounds like Iceland might surrender a lot of its sovereignty by potentially joining the European Union once they get their economy back to the point where the EU will allow membership. So you could see in the United States possibly us joining part of a different economic or trading bloc in the form of a North American Union. We already have NAFTA, and the EU was phased in very gradually over the period of decades. It started with a coal and iron trading agreement. So a lot of people think it's impossible that we would surrender our national sovereignty as the United States and maybe join some kind of a union with Canada and Mexico. They did it in Europe, though. They're doing it in South America. It's something that I don't want to see happen here, but it's a possibility. When people get angry, they're broke, they're going to demand change. But it's not necessarily...
We got change coming, right? What kind of change?
But change isn't always good change. Sometimes people make a change for the worse, not always a change for the better.
All right, one thing that we have been told here on Free Minds TV is that sometimes we're a little bit too partisan. We're talking about politics too much, and well, yeah, that's what the show is all about. I wanted to shift gears here a little bit, Nick. I know that you brought in one story that actually had nothing to do with politics, and it's about ways that you can protect yourself if you're scared and the flu's coming and it's hitting you, but those flu shots, they can get a little bit scary. I know there's all those conspiracy theories out there, but how else can you protect yourself? Well, you could stay in your house and never go outside, but not everybody wants to be a hermit. What else can you do, Nick? What if you really want to protect yourself, you don't want the flu shot, you don't want to get sick, and you still want to go outside? What should you do?
Well, British and Australian scientists have found that by wearing one of those masks, not a flu mask, but one of those germ masks that you wear, you see the
a doctor mask?
Yeah, the assistant uses it in the dentist's office. One of those masks, not like a big gas mask or anything, but just one of those ones that covers your face. It actually does help prevent the flu. They found that in parents who did wear the masks, they were 4 times less likely than those who did not to contract influenza from their sick children. So it actually does help fight the flu, and that's something that I had always guessed actually wouldn't help you, because it always seemed to me that the holes were too big to stop the bacteria, because bacteria are really small.
But Nick, are you really going to wear a mask everywhere you go, all around your house? I mean, it seems a little ridiculous to me.
Granted, most people aren't, and that's
I'm going to make fun of you if you do this.
I'm not going to do it, and I thought about that when I read this, but maybe if you had sick kids and an older relative living with you and they're at a higher risk, if they get the flu, maybe they're just not going to feel sick, it could do some bad things to them, then maybe they would want to wear the mask. So just for your information, if you're more concerned about getting the flu than about looking kind of silly and having your face get all itchy and hot, those masks actually work.
Well, if you wear one...
Or so the study says. I don't know. I didn't do the study.
But regardless, you wear one, I'm going to make fun of you. Well, that's just me. I'm a mean guy like that. We're out of time today. It's been Tobias here with you.
And Nick.
Nicholas. Anyways, log on to our website, freemindstv.com. Everything you need to know is up there, freemindstv.com. It's the beginning of a new vote, and we'll invite you to vote for us at vote.freemindstv.com. And push us up in the podcast ranking. It really helps out.
It helped last month. We started out in the top 10 on Podcast Alley. It got us a lot more views the days we were on that top 10 ranking because we're right up there on the front page. So please go vote on the first or soon thereafter.
Yeah. Anyways, have a great night. Stay safe and wear a doctor mask. Bye. Bye-bye.
Free Minds TV is brought to you by freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.